All right, everybody, welcome not only to our folks on Zoom, but also on the YouTube live stream, and welcome, Joe. Let me talk a little bit about Joe, but I'm Tom Byers, and I'd like to welcome you and everybody else to the ETL Thought Leaders Revisited special series that we're putting on. And what I mean by we is STVP, this Entrepreneurship Center here at Stanford University. And I'm proud to be associated with STVP and be a professor in the engineering school. So we're welcoming back Joe Simone, who was here just almost 4 years ago in 2016. He co-founded Carbon 3 years before that and served as its CEO all the way up until last year when he named a new CEO, which I hope we talk a little bit about today. But right now he's the executive chairman and very involved still in Carbon. So we'll be talking a great deal about Carbon. He took it from a small team of scientists and engineers into a global company that is defining, and I mean defining, the digital revolution in manufacturing. Previously, he was a professor at the University of North Carolina as well, and he did an incredible number of things there in green chemistry, medical devices, nanotechnology. I just found out, Joe, that you are only one of 20 people in the United States that's a member of the National Academies of Medicine, Engineering, and Sciences, which is just mind-blowing. And in the midst of, doing 350 scientific publications, an inventor of 200 issued patents, he's been a great entrepreneur through all this. So in 2016, to recognize that, President Obama, the same year he was with us in ETL the first time, President Obama at the time awarded him the National Medal of Technology and Innovation, the highest honor in the US for achievement in leadership in advancing technological progress. Oh my goodness. Do you ever sleep?
It sounds like my mother wrote that intro, Tom. Thank you.
Well, so for over 20 years, you were a professor at the University of North Carolina, and we're just talking about that I'm honored this year to be a visiting professor there, although albeit virtual. So it's great to be your colleague because you still have an appointment there and at NC State. But while you were there, you were also doing these scientific breakthroughs, like I mentioned, and co-founding several companies, all before launching Carbon. So can you share a little bit more about that path and how you balance those two?
Well, sure. It's great to connect with a Dookie here as a Tar Heel, but in fact, my first PhD student, Valerie Ashby, is now Dean of Trinity College there at Duke University. So I'm much more tolerant of my Duke colleagues there. But yeah, Carolina hired me when I was 25 to help start a polymer program, and I brought a utilitarian-like perspective from Virginia Tech and a liberal arts education from Ursinus College, and tried to meld all that together and launch my program. And it was a center-based research. I had great students. We really focused on fundamentals that would have an impact in the real world. I call it translational research. But I taught entrepreneurship. We had an entrepreneurship minor in the College of Arts and Sciences at Carolina, and I started several companies, but I was never on the field with any of the companies. And as you know, you learn so much more by doing. And when Jim Getz and the team at Sequoia asked me I had already hired a CEO for Carbon. If they asked me to lead it, I thought, boy, now that would be a real opportunity to learn from the inside and be on the field. And it's been an incredible run. 6 years as CEO. That's a 24/7 job. And for 6 years, it's very intense. But, there's nothing like that in academia. When I walk in the parking lot at the company, all I see are car payments and mortgage payments and people that left great companies to come work for our company. And there's an immense amount of responsibility that you have as a founder, CEO, that is, there's really nothing quite equivalent to that in the academy.
Yeah, well, Carbon's been quite a ride. So let's talk a little bit about what's gone on since 4 years ago. Let's do it in this context. And this has been our format this summer, as you heard about, and we're going to keep right on rolling this. Take some of the clips from that period and then fast forward to now and talk about what's happened. and then prepare. We'll make sure for sure to talk about the future. So let's take this first one, and it's has to do with a model that we. Well, frankly, it's one of the mainstays of entrepreneurship education. That's crossing the chasm. So let's play clip number one that you showed back 4 years ago.
And a chasm is in this technology adoption curve, where in the beginning of all new technology introductions, the techies drive adoption. Techies love products. In fact, they love products that are not complete. They like to cobble together a partial solution. And that's part of what they love to do. But to really get to the early majority or the large volume of revenue, you need an economically viable solution. People don't care about technology on the other side of the chasm. They want a solution that's economically viable.
Well, first of all, you looked exactly the same as you did 4 years ago.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't wear that. I took that sport coat off, but.
But all right, so this is a very important concept, as I mentioned, in entrepreneurship education. So where is 3D now in the adoption curve?
So, up to this point,
3D printing, I mean.
Yeah, so up to the point when Carbon launched, 3D printing has been mostly a prototyping industry, right? And that includes hardware, software, materials, even the parts. And that's about an $8 billion marketplace. Also had some dental in there. Dental has been part of this sector. And so that's probably the most commercial of the traditional 3D printing. When we figured out how to take 3D printing and go faster and make real parts, that was the beginning to go into the $300 billion manufacturing world of injection molding. And so I think, what's crossing a chasm for us is, what are the use cases? What are the killer apps, if you will, that drove high volume manufacturing? And Adidas, I don't know if I mentioned Adidas back then, but Adidas is our partner. And we always thought, boy, if we could scale up a consumer running shoe, the world would be our oyster, because we would have figured out a lot of stuff, advanced materials, global scale manufacturing. And we figured that out. And now you can go adidas.com and buy the Alpha Edges and the 4D and lots of great running shoes, and over 1 million pair already with that. We also have liners for Riddell, football helmets, personalized helmets, over 1,000 NFL D1 athletes and many other sports coming along. And so those high volume consumer, including specialized bike seats, they've all happened. We've crossed the chasm. And now it's scaling to replace foam more broadly. We also have the very first parts on production vehicles out of Detroit. New cars, Ford Mustangs, F-150 trucks, the very first parts on 3D printed polymeric parts on those cars and trucks. And so that sets the stage. It took us 2 years to get through the Ford quality standards to make that happen. But now that opens up many billions of opportunity in electrical connectors and other sort of applications in the automotive space. And then, in the healthcare space for us, not only dental and dental models, but, we have now the first FDA approved 3D printed dentures. And, you could argue that we should do nothing else but dentures right now. It's a $14 billion marketplace. We have over 5,000 people now wearing the first 3D printed dentures. And so there are great examples of crossing the chasm, but they are the killer apps, and we need thousands of those. We're expecting to do thousands of those applications, because that's what manufacturing is all about, and that's what we're focused on.
So was shoes the lead? Jeff Moore, who developed that model, as you know, he talked about bowling alley, where you knock over the first pin and it.
Yeah.
So what was the first pin? Was it the shoes?
It's the shoes, and the bowling alley for us, there's several bowling alleys. So we try to be disciplined, but foam replacement, using elastomer lattices to replace foam, from Adidas running shoes, specialized bike seats, Riddell football helmets, all those kinds of advanced applications. Another bowling alley for us would have been industrials.
Yeah.
Electrical connectors, Vitamix, Lamborghini parts, NASA parts. We have parts on circulating the space station, on the first autonomous untethered vehicles circulating the space station. Beck& Dickinson. So they're bowling alleys, but for us, it's really a platform to make parts. Resins are the enabler of the TAM, right? Every resin opens up new TAM, new capabilities, new properties, and that's how we think about it.
My niece went berserk when she heard I was talking to you. She's a teenager back in Minnesota and a big Adidas fan. So that's all it took. So,
well, it's neat to be a chemistry professor and be the cool kid on the block with sneakers. So it's unusual for me.
All right. Well, also back then you talked about 4 years ago, talked about future proofing, which I really love that term. I had not heard that before. And future-proofing your customers through an innovative business model, which I heard about that. In other words, innovate not only in technology, which clearly was a no-brainer for you, but also the great companies also innovate in business models. So let's play that clip number 2, yep. Future-proofing customers.
And again, as I mentioned to you, that we're coming out with this printer as a subscription model, right? It's a rental. What this really does is it aligns us with our customers' printing, right? This is not a transactional sale, it's a partnership. And most importantly, this future-proofs our customers, right? I know the product roadmap. I know when this product's going to be obsolete. Our customers don't have to worry about that, right? They're not locked in, they're future-proofed. And especially for a company like us that's just coming out with a brand new technology, I don't have the heart to have people buy stuff that I know is going to be obsolete. And so the subscription model, for lots of reasons, becomes an important way to move a new product into the marketplace.
All right. So how's this business model working?
It's been the key to the whole business.
Really?
In fact, I looked at the slide. I forgot to appreciate. So that was our first printer, the M1. And we only built about 100 of those. Now the commercial product at that scale is called the M2. And just as a great example, it's got twice the build area. And so it went up 2x, and the price went up 25% to $50,000 a year instead of 40. And so, that's an example of, people, you got twice the build area, you can have twice the throughput, and you didn't have to throw away the other printer, right? People can upgrade. And we actually have a customer that took back all the 100s and are using them in other markets, or they're continuing to be used beyond their 3 years. And so that's a great example. But the key is it's 100% smart hardware that takes over-the-air software upgrades. And the process is intrinsically digital. We think of it as a software controlled chemical reaction to grow parts. And so what's key is we've been able to do software upgrades every 6 to 8 weeks. And the process is getting better and better. So in many ways, it's like a network effect, right? The more people use it, the better the product's getting. And the ability of rolling out new resins. And so now, in sort of hindsight, I don't know how you introduce a new physical product without doing a subscription model with it, which intrinsically future-proofs customers. And it gives us really close relationships with our customers. So they're partnerships, and we get to know who we're doing business with, and 35% of our sales or so goes to existing customers. And so it's really a land and expand marketplace, and it's an install base that's growing and growing, and the subscription model really helps us with that.
Wow. Well, again, another big important takeaway that we stress in all our entrepreneurship courses is, and it's, especially for our STEM students, is it enlightens them that innovation is not just relegated to being a technology breakthrough. It can also be a business model breakthrough.
Totally right, Tom. I think the board, the company, everybody believes that the breakthrough in the business model is as significant as the technology, and it's built relationships. It's kind of what Alan Mulally did when he was at Boeing and had power by the hour for the GE jet engines. And so it's really been a key part of who we are.
All right. I want to talk to you about COVID because I realize you're over at the School of Medicine here at Stanford right now. I am not on campus. I think you might be one of the very few people on campus, but I want to talk about COVID and what you've been doing in that. But before we do that, let's talk about sustainability. I know that's been a core value for the company since the get-go. So how do how do you emphasize that in both the technology and the business model?
Yeah, they actually have to be done hand in hand. We now believe, we know that 3D printing is going to be big. And, so many businesses don't think ahead about the implications of their technology. When you look about, think about Uber, and it was going to be a company that was going to eliminate congestion in cities, and now it's causing a lot of congestion. Or, Juul was going to help people stop smoking, and it started vaping. And encryption was going to protect our privacy, and it's now the domain of criminals. I mean, just you have to think at the broad implications. And for carbon, 3D printing is going to be big. We have to think ahead of schedule, ahead of time, about environmental stewardship, right? So we've been able to now take that as an initiative out of the gates and think about our largest volume resins, Adidas running shoes, dental models, and what can we do to make those recyclable? You think about Invisalign-like products, right? We make a model of teeth, and you thermoform a sheet of plastic on it to make an aligner. And the 3D printed model is a single-use plastic. It's used for 30 minutes, and it's going to be landfilled for hundreds of years. Because it's a thermoset. Well, our technical team has designed a resin that can turn that back to liquid, a reversible thermoset. And we think we can do that for elastomer lattices too. And so if you can do that, and you have a business model that collects those and doesn't rely on the municipal waste stream, right? But you have a business model that you bring those models back, you chemically digest it, turn it back to liquid, and reuse it. So that's where we're going. That's a higher calling. And when every part has got a barcode on there, you can actually quantify, maybe for the first time, somebody's environmental footprint on recycling, data-driven. But you also get into lightweight parts, bio-based feedstocks, local for local production, and ultimately avoiding inventory. Inventory ties up a lot of capital. A lot of parts are sitting in air-conditioned buildings just waiting to be used. So you think about on-demand inventory, and there's a lot of things on the environmental side that are really enabled by having a digital manufacturing platform.
Wow.
A lot to unpack there.
It sounds like science fiction, but it's not.
It's, I still get goosebumps. So, as a polymer person, I remember in grad school, just making a test specimen that looked like a dog bone was hard. And now we just print, thousands of them. It's the team's been amazing. It's really been pretty remarkable.
Well, sustainability and climate is a big deal, and it's a big issue for the planet. It was in 2016. It is in 2020. And we've been faced with some other big deals that have come along this year. So let's talk about COVID. The reason you're on campus this afternoon, I'm assuming, is from what you said this morning, was you were meeting with the dean of our School of Medicine and the CEO of Stanford Hospital. So a few weeks ago, and it was back in May, we had Andy Karsner of X as an ETL speaker, and he for everybody who's watching, if you go back to the ETL in May with Andy Karsner, it's a fantastic ETL about, speaking of climate and sustainability, that's his expertise. But about 20 minutes in, around the 20-minute mark, he goes off on you in a big way. And he's talking about this COVID thing that you did. So can you, before we play the clip, can you tell us a little bit what's going on?
Well, the context, I was moving into my governance role at the company. Ellen and I had just traded places, and then COVID hit, and all of a sudden we're getting inundated with knowledge about supply chain disruption. And we've been talking about from the very beginning what digital manufacturing can do. And we were mostly thinking about earthquakes and storms, things that could disrupt the supply chain. Then you get this pandemic, and all of a sudden, very simple things like face shields are in massive short supply. And the hospitals, they only stack a couple weeks of supplies on these things. And now all of a sudden they're just inundated. And then COVID testing swabs.
Mhm.
You know, the biggest factory for making these testing swabs was in Lombardy, Italy. And they got hammered with the coronavirus. And so here is the disruption that is actually the irony. It's disrupting the things that allow us to test for the disruption. And so there was this massive shortage. The Air Force flew in the last million swabs, and everybody was panicked. And I didn't know what a nasopharyngeal swab was when I started, but we looked into it, and we could walk you through.
Yeah, let's play the clip and talk some more about it.
At Carbon, our purpose is to improve lives with science, technology, and creativity. When COVID-19 hit and we saw a world confronted by medical supply shortages, we knew we needed to do something. We brought together our employees, partners, and customers to address two needs. First, protect healthcare workers. Second, increase testing capacity for COVID-19. Digital light synthesis, our 3D printing technology, is enabling the protection of those on the front lines by making up to 50,000 face shields a week. And more accessible testing thanks to resolution medical lattice swabs, crafted with Carbon technology. Together, we're making what the world needs now.
So I just want us all to take a minute here or a second and just recall the compressed time we're talking about. So we're in June, we're still in the pandemic, but this was about 4 months ago. You're having an incredible run with what? Huge deals with Adidas and the other major companies you talked about. You could have just sat back and rode that momentum, but then you got inspired. So how about this? What were some of the, tell us a story about some of the, I hate to put in the negative, but what were some of the roadblocks you went through to make it happen in such a fast time?
Well, as you know, everything was happening so fast. And then, the other thing to realize is that a good chunk of Carbon's business is in dental, and dental was shutting down, right? So there's this capacity sitting there, and a lot of our partners are sitting there. So we had Ellen Coleman called a town hall meeting, and Philip and I, my son, we hosted over 300 of our partners and team members, and we said, look, we have a lot of resin. And we have a tool that doesn't need molds to make things, right? It's using light. And remember how people make things physically, typically by injection molding, is you have to invest a lot of time and energy to have a mold. And then you heat a plastic up, you fill the molds with the part, let it cool down, open up the mold and take the part out. We do things without molds. It's moldless. We use light to craft things. And so what we did is, we pivoted our capability, our machines, our team, and we said, look, we'll push face shields designs, and we'll design two different ones to meet the properties of two different high volume resins that were sitting there available, our dental model resin and our Adidas running shoe resin. And so working with Adidas and working with all our dental customers, we pushed designs out into the field, and we're approaching 1,000 printers globally, and we're in 17 different countries, and we gave people that had capacity and interest the capability of keeping not only keeping their employees going and keeping their businesses going, but to help out in their local communities, right? So I think we did over 350,000 face shields, 50,000 shields a week, and still counting, and people are renewing, and now they're going into grocery stores and dentist offices and all sorts of things. So that's pretty cool. The testing swab, we literally learned about what the conventional swab looked like, and we printed new varieties the next day, one day.
You're kidding.
No, it was amazing. Our team, Hardik and our team, and Marie and Steve Pollock, we figured out, some early designs, went through a couple dozen different designs, And then we worked with a medical device partner, Resolution Medical, who is an FDA registered medical company, because we're not, and stood up a supply chain that leveraged the dental labs. Remember, there's 7,000 dental labs that support over 100,000 dentists. And those labs are our customers that have our printers. They're the ones that make the physical things that dentists use. Mm-hmm. And we pivoted one of our dental resins that was used for making night guards. It was already FDA approved for night guards. It's approved for mucosal contact. It's a soft plastic. And we created a very soft lattice structure. And we brought a medical device to life. And Resolution Medical launched a device in 20 days, a Class 1 exempt device. And then 50 days later, and that's why I'm over here at Stanford, 50 days later, we completed over a 400 patient clinical evaluation of 2 different lattice designs and compared them to a standard swab for performance on comfort, collection efficiency, the PCR compatibility. It was a non-inferiority trial. It's more than equivalent. And there actually is a hint that we have a lower false negative rate for low viral loads. And so we need to go study and quantify that. But it's pretty remarkable that in 20 days, you could bring a medical device product to life and complete a 400 patient trial 50 days later.
Well, you are helping the heroes, and you're helping us, just humans that as well. I think you are way up. You're up the supply chain of heroes as well. You and your company, and hats off to you. I want to talk more about that, but maybe we'll do that during Q&A. I just don't want to miss this opportunity to play a couple of more clips having to do with another phrase that I remember well from 4 years ago, the drivers of innovation. And you were talking about this notion of convergence. So can we play a couple of clips? First clip is about connecting with the humanities, which is another big theme of ours nowadays at Stanford and the Entrepreneurship Center. So let's play clip number 4.
Historically, the word convergence and its meaning has often implied the convergence of the physical sciences, engineering, and medicine. In fact, that's the way MIT has classically referred to convergence. But I think what it really means is bringing together disciplines in maybe not so obvious ways and thinking about what emerges from that. But I think more broadly, and what Apple has done, is I think you have to think about extending this to the social sciences, the humanities, and perhaps even the performing arts. And thinking about tech and the humanities and the liberal arts as an important aspect. And as part of that, I think a lot of people believe that convergence itself is actually a blueprint for innovation.
So can you give us some interesting examples of convergence?
Well, I think in the beginning, especially back then, I was building upon what we were talking about with hardware, software, and chemistry all coming together. Those are disciplines that are spread out, and there's a lot of good stuff in between those disciplines. So there's that level that is very tangible, and I think it's easy for people to understand. A software controlled chemical reaction to grow parts, that is very tangible, and that's a foundation. But then you think about that in context of a business approach. The idea of rolling in a subscription model, which has never been done in the physical world. Certainly, this is the very first piece of manufacturing hardware ever to go out with a subscription model, right? And then 100% hardware, and what that means from a context of inventory replacement and the like. And so, now you roll it up and you think about, again, back to the liberal arts, you think about everything in context, right? You think about what it takes to make an impact. What are the economics? What are the history of all that? And, understanding all the business aspects and supply chain dynamics. And to me, that's all the convergence coming together that you have to think about the business model, societal implications, helping our customers, where to make impact, to think about recycling now, as opposed to waiting after the fact, and realize you've caused a problem, like I alluded to with Juul and other companies, and it's really that contextualization of what it is you're doing, that really brings all that together. And, we're now working on, meeting folks here in pediatrics. We're working with folks, neonatal babies that have cleft palates and that they're too young to have surgery, and working with amazing doctors here to seal the palate and maybe work with palate expanders as the babies grow. And it's just having, the wherewithal, the understanding of context and impact and being open. It's a big part of it.
Well, it was interesting. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to attend an urgent or important academic council meeting. In other words, it's gathering all the number of professors at Stanford, and it was a mix of humanities professors and engineering and physical sciences professors. And there was an issue on the table that's not so as important as it was. I heard over and over how the engineering professors loved being part of a liberal arts university. Right. And I know that that's the way professors feel at UNC and Duke. That's why it's very comfortable for me to be a visitor, because especially since I'm an entrepreneurship professor, my counterparts at UNC and Duke feel the same way, that engineers ought to learn about the humanities, and of course, humanities majors ought to learn, enough to about technology to be Renaissance people. Everybody can learn to be a Renaissance person. It doesn't have to, it's not something you're necessarily born with. All right, let's play another clip because this is also, a very, very important topic this year. And this is the advantage of diversity. Let's play clip number 5.
We learn the most from those that we have the least in common with, right? And you think about that. If you're getting part of a design team, and you're fortunate to be part of a design team, you recognize that these different experiences drive the innovation process. I can tell you more times than not, different design teams I've been associated with, if somebody grew up with not much money, they think about problem solving fundamentally different than somebody that grew up with a lot of money. Not that one is better than the other, they're just different. And if your goal is to broaden the perspectives around the table, then you have to think about this diversity, this element of diversity to drive innovation.
All right, well, that was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
How about 4 weeks ago? So how do you think about diversity now and what's going on in America in particular? And what does that have to do with carbon?
It's not a lot's changed, frankly. And when you look back, I remember in the late 1990s, my group, a very diverse group at Carolina, I graduated over 80 PhD students, and half were women and others underrepresented in sciences. And I had a large number of African Americans in my group, and I was given a talk in South Carolina in the 1990s, and the NAACP had a boycott on the state of South Carolina because of the Confederate flag. And I was a keynote lecturer, and we decided we weren't going to go as a group. And what happened was they ended up moving the meeting to another state. And now we hear about NASCAR finally addressing the Confederate flag. It's just a lot has happened, but a lot hasn't changed. And our faculties don't represent the diversity of our student population, and there's so many things that we need to keep working on. And again, back to the importance of it, this is where the richness of innovation is, right? The diversity of perspectives, the thinking and cultural values, all that comes together. And if we don't get this right, we're holding back innovation. Mm-hmm. And it takes a relentless, unfortunately, it takes relentless leadership to keep making this front and center, because I'll tell you, I see it so many times that if you don't keep it front and center, it's easy not to do. And it's got to be relentless, and people fall back to not thinking about it. And it's uncomfortable being with people that are different than you. And that uncomfort has got to be harnessed, right? That's where all the richness is, right? Early in my academic career, I got invited to an innovation group. And not only was it all white guys around the table, but they all graduated from the same research group. And they all knew the same stuff. And they were at a structural disadvantage for driving innovation, right? Your community is, you've got to think about your community, your groups at the onset, or you're not going to be as innovative as you possibly could be. And that's something you've got to be relentless. It's great. Ellen Coleman, this has been a big passion of hers too. And one of the great reasons why she's part of the team at Carbon, and she's been a strong advocate, and it's a really important thing for us.
Well, take a moment to talk a little bit about Ellen, please. I wanted to do that earlier as well. I think this is important because she has a great reputation in terms of DEI.
Yeah, no, Ellen is amazing. You know, so we got Alan Mullally on our board at Carbon. You know, he was the iconic CEO of Ford Motor Company, and we needed chemical acumen on our board, and I asked if anybody knew Ellen. She just stepped down as CEO at DuPont, and I didn't think I could get to her, but Alan could get to her, and may have invited her to play golf somewhere or something. But she came and she checked us out, and I knew their technical team at DuPont. They knew me. I think she did a little due diligence there, and she joined our board about 4 years ago, and brought a lot of perspective. And so she's been my partner in crime as I've been leading the company as CEO for 4 years. She then became our lead director. And, lo and behold, she is, she's having a great life. I thought, being a board member. She's a board of Goldman Sachs and Amgen, United Technologies, Dell, and Carbon. And she's fairly young and wanted to get back at it and to be CEO somewhere. And I've been CEO for 6 years, and my heart and soul is in academia, and been doing that for 24/7. And we ended up switching roles. And so she's CEO. She switched in November. Her timing is not great. Right before COVID, and when she joined DuPont, it was right before the financial crisis. So other than that, it's been really great. And what great leadership. As we scale our business, she really understands global dynamics and how to build businesses and scale them overseas. And, we're in 17 countries now, and she just brings, that kind of scalability, the processes, and as Carbon continues its trajectory, having that kind of leadership has been awesome.
Well, thanks, Joe, for that whirlwind. We can come back to some of the important topics that we were covering just then, DEI, for example, and some of the future-proofing, convergence, anything's game. But I want to give our students and others a chance to participate. Now, I see a question here. It's a little bit long, but let me do the punchline and back up. How does Carbon select its clients, and does the company take into account the long-term impacts of the client's company? This has to do with itself may allow waste reduction and capital optimization for its clients. The clients' activities may still be significantly contributing to climate change, and speedy 3D printing may just accelerate their activities. So how do you balance that sort of competing values, I guess?
Well, a subscription model is a partnership, and it allows you to assess your customers, and also allows you to understand your values and if you're value aligned. With a subscription model, because we technically own the hardware, we have terms and conditions for its use. So along those lines, we actually say not for weapons, right? Because we have advanced materials, and we don't want to usher in a new era of security issues. And so we get to say those things, and that that allows us to work with the kinds of customers we want. And this is the environmental stewardship opportunities allow us to hear the feedback from customers and understand the technological challenges to enable their aspirations, right? So designing new resins and new business models to help drive their aspirations. So that's how we think about that.
All right, here's another one. It's related, so maybe building on that. When would you suggest a subscription model? Many people complain about software subscription models because costs add up.
Well, I think the compelling reason for us is this future proofing. Yeah. I actually think a subscription model is more compelling in the physical world than it is in the I was going to say more compelling. It's as compelling as you can get, because the last thing you want is to have legacy hardware and a transactional sale where your provider is not aligned with your business goals. We get telemetry from the printers. They have 80% use time. Many are working, over 100 hours per week. we could watch the dip on the coronavirus. We watched it come back. All those things allow us to work closely with our customers. And I think if you've got a hardware business, you've got to think about this, unless it's a hardware business that's one and done. When you launch a platform, and we're staring at 30 years of innovation, I cannot imagine a more compelling reason to not have a subscription model. It really enables one to work closely with your customers and really drive innovation. Imagine if you were inhibited to innovate because customers would get mad at you because they just bought your hardware, right? This now like gets rid of that hesitation, and you're just driving innovation the whole time.
We got another question here, and I'm really glad to see this one because I wanted to come back to this topic, and this is around DEI. It says, how do you track and measure your efforts on diversity and inclusion? How do you make this a relentless pursuit? Where are the pitfalls? How do you go beyond just the optics? This is something that's going on in the leadership of pretty much every enterprise you can think of, whether it's a startup, whether it's a rocket ship like yours, or whether it's an established, company.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And, something that I think I learned early on is that, you've got to be clear about your values. Early in my academic career, and this boycott is one example. If you're clear about your values on your website and your promotional materials, what happens is you become a destination for excellence, wherever it's at. People want to align themselves with who you are because they're purpose driven many times. And if you're also clear about your values, it's almost self-fulfilling, because there are some people that realize, maybe they shouldn't be part of your organization, right? So it can be really self-fulfilling about that. And so being clear about what's important to you, becoming a destination for excellence is a key part of that. And then it's actually, measuring and quantifying that. You look at, Carbon, as we get ready for the next phase of Carbon, we've been very intentional about our hiring, and, our general counsel, Meg Nibby, our CFO, Elisa DeMartel, our CHRO, Barb Cadigan, our CMO, Dara Treseder, now our CEO. I mean, this is a manufacturing company. It's led mostly by women, and a great team. But it's not at a board level. We've got 2 women on our board, and I really like the new laws in California about the number of women on boards, because it gives us, it allows us to go back to the investors and say, look, guys. And I meant guys, and it wasn't the Philadelphia guys, it was the literal guys. It's like, look, we need to be compliant, and there's too many people occupying precious seats. And so the investors, who are often not very diverse, have got to give us latitude at companies to be able to allow our company's boards to be reflective of our values. And so it takes the leadership of the investors to realize that we got to create seats. And even if those regulations help drive it, I'm really grateful for that, because it gives us a strong argument to have the boards reflective of our company's values.
There's a question here about the COVID work, and I'd like to share that with you. After COVID has waned, and we don't know when that will be, could be this year, could be next year, could be a while.
It's going to be a while.
Yeah, I think so. Do you see Carbon continuing to make medical devices?
That's a
You're
great
in
question.
the dental market already, but is this a big bowling alley for you?
Yeah, I think it's TBD. There's over 100, the nasopharyngeal swab was invented in like 1922, right after the Spanish flu. And there's over 100 different swabs out there. And it's going to be performance driven. It's a mid-turbinate swab for the nares and an oral swab. And, we were just on a great call with the Jan Zuckerberg Center here with Steve Quake and his team. And there's a need to integrate designs for high throughput analysis instead of humans breaking off the current stem of the swab. And so to me, I think there's actually going to be multiple products in this space that are going to be new products that no one's ever redesigned a swab in 100 years, right? And so there was no reason to. And so now all of a sudden you realize that there's capabilities to improve performance, improve function, improve comfort, opening up new high throughput opportunities for sequencing or testing. So I think it's here to stay. And what's going to be interesting too, there's some really important dialogues out there now about supply chain disruption for our nation. And I think I would rank order things like, pharmaceuticals and biologics, and making sure that we're able to have these available in the country. You see a lot of work on integrated circuits and chips, onshoring of that capability, and then physical goods, what we do in the injection molding world, and having, reshoring manufacturing and having the flexibility of pushing files in different directions, in different locations in order to have agility in the supply chain. Those things are here to stay. And the COVID was our moment to shine of what digital transformation, digital manufacturing enables.
Joe, we've got more questions here, but I'm watching the time, and I'm realizing that this is a special moment, and you're a special person. I mean, just what you've accomplished in your contributions to the planet and its well-being so far in your life. But put yourself back in being an undergrad, and that's our sweet spot with this speaker series. It was in 2016, it was 10 years before that, and it still is. This is an amazing time to be a college student.
Wow.
If you stop for a moment, and think about all, and the same goes with me. So what do you say to this current generation of college students, and how they might be feeling this summer with all these things firing at one time?
Yeah, it's a great question. But these are going to be badges of honor this time, right? I mean, it was in 9/11, it was in the financial crisis, this is going to be a time that it's going to be remembered. The stories are going to be told. And what's, I think, really magical about this time, and that's the word I'm going to use, magical, is there's so many things happening now, right? It's not just the coronavirus, it's the economic impact from the coronavirus, and it's the racial disparities all coming together. And this apparent chaos is going to give, this is the moment to fix a lot of stuff that needs fixing. That has been taking too long in my lifetime. It's taken too long on a lot of racial diversity, inclusive issues. And all of a sudden now it's time. And you could do it through the cover of chaos. I heard someone explain it the other day that way. And it may have been at a Coach K leadership thing that I was on. I hate to admit that, but it may have been on that. But nonetheless, this is the moment. And I think everyone is going to be able to reflect back on this moment, what they did to help make a difference, because this is a tipping point on so many really important things. And to me, this is an inspirational time, especially if we make it this moment to fix stuff that's taken decades and hasn't been fixed. And they're going to be able to tell these stories. This is going to be their badge of honor. This is going to be their moment. And when they deal with other issues in the future, they're going to be, we're going to be okay because we lived through this time and we came out better for it. And that's what I would tell the undergrads.
Thanks. If we were in the room where we usually are and where you were 4 years ago, I am sure there'd be a deafening level of applause right now from 300 students in the live audience, but let's just pretend like that's what you hear. And I just want to thank you on behalf of everybody that's participating today live, and everybody that'll watch this over the summer. Man, we could have gone and on. We got some great questions here. Sorry about that, but we covered a lot of ground here, and it no surprise, because there's any kind of interview with you is going to cover a lot of ground. I still get a kick out of that you're at the School of Medicine right now, and doing this where the rest of us are not on campus. So So let me just wrap up by saying to all those, I found out earlier, I looked down when I was making sure I didn't mess up. So I got to look up here. To all those watching, thank you for joining our special ETL Thought Leaders Revisited series. We're inviting former ETL speakers to the virtual ETL stage all summer and to share how their world has changed. And like we say, for almost all of them, the world has changed a great deal since they originally were with us. So we will continue to live stream this talk on YouTube every Wednesday at this very same place you're at right now at 4:30 Pacific time. So every Wednesday, all through July and August, we got some great speakers coming up. Just to learn more, just visit etl.stanford.edu to see who we have coming up, or ecorner.stanford.edu, either one, etl.stanford.edu or ecorner.stanford.edu. And with that, any closing thoughts there, Joe?
Well, Tom, I want to thank you and the whole Stanford team. You know, these are they're fun for us too to participate, and it's our time, and I'm glad you're facilitating all of this. And thank you for doing what you do.
Oh, I appreciate it. And on behalf of the team, this is a lot of people behind the proverbial camera here that has stood up this series this summer, and I wish I could name them all, but thank you everyone every single one of them. And we'll see, quote unquote, all of you back next Wednesday, either live or feel free to watch a recorded version. Well, we'll welcome another great speaker. One more time, thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Tom.
We'll wrap up now.